Even the most docile of creatures can be reimagined as powerful, dangerous, or vicious. Cows, for instance, are a key part of human life. We use their meat for food, their milk for dairy, and their hides for leather. We can safely say that cows and bulls have long been a part of our existence. However, despite our harmonious coexistence, we have also taken bulls and cows and reimagined a creature based on them that is both mighty and dangerous to the extreme. From the Greek myth to the modern fantasy race, today we shall discuss Minotaurs. This is Fantastical History. For those unfamiliar, a Minotaur is the name of a monster from Greek myth, a large beast with the body of a man and the head of a bull. According to the myth, the Minotaur was the product of Zeus taking the form of a bull and mating with the wife of wicked King Minos. The offspring was so horrifying and vicious that King Minos commissioned a giant labyrinth be built to house the creature so it would never find its way out. This plan proved useful for executions as well, as King Minos could force his convicts into the labyrinth where they would either die from endless wandering or from being killed by the monster. Eventually, the hero Theseus kills the Minotaur, but the appearance and presence of the monster remains in the human mind. Before we go too much further into this video, I'd like to emphasize that if such a monster actually existed in history, or if all Minotaurs were likened to that monster, they would not have survived. They would have been hunted and exterminated quickly and efficiently. But today, we're not talking about specifically the feral monster of Greek myth. In more recent times, Minotaurs have been treated as their own unique race of creature that could potentially live alongside humanity. So, today we're going to talk about such a situation. How would they live? Well, cows are often treated as unintelligent animals, but I can assure you that that's not the case. Unlike sheep, cows are rather intelligent, but their docile nature and their long history with humanity has ingrained them with a sense of ease around us that makes them not see us as threats. Minotaurs, therefore, are not an unintelligent race. In fact, depending on what part of the world they're in, how they live and are treated could vary. For example, they would thrive in lands such as India or the Middle East, where cows can potentially be seen as divine or being worshipped. But they might face some discrimination in European or East Asian lands, where cows are seen more for labor or food. When the creature appears less than human, it becomes far easier to forget that they have human intelligence or feelings. But we'll return to that point in a minute. The real issue Minotaurs face is the fact that they naturally could not form large communities larger than what might constitute a tribe or small collective group. Minotaurs are considered very built or large creatures. Even the females are often depicted larger than a human, or at least around the same height as a human man. So having such powerful and large bodies means that they require more food to function at full capacity. Too many Minotaurs in one place would mean a competition for resources and food. If the Minotaurs truly wanted to congregate, they would require human assistance and resource gathering and production. Because of this, war for resources or trade would be essential. And because Minotaurs again would lack the large enough numbers to engage in long drawn-out war with human culture, and would lack the raw materials with which to create armor and weapons to combat later human civilizations, like the Greeks or the Romans, eventually Minotaurs would have little choice but to bow to human assistance and domination. The benefit that Minotaurs might offer would be great, however. Being large and powerful means that they could be very useful for manual labor, able to do the work of possibly 3 men, farming, industry, agriculture, construction, you name it. It would become very easy and quick with that kind of manual help. Their strength and odd appearance would also be useful in combat terms. The Roman world would adore Minotaurs as gladiators. 2 large bullmen fighting in the arena would be a brilliant sight to be sure, and on the battlefield their massive bodies, powerful strength, and brutal nature, they would be excellent shock troopers. However, despite all of these benefits, the Minotaurs face one harsh problem they can't easily overcome. Eventually, they would very likely face enslavement. In a previous video, I said that Drider, the spider people, would never be enslaved because they produce a valuable resource that is hard to replicate and would allow the Western world to compete with the Eastern world for silk trade. Enslaving and mistreating them would possibly slow production, and that can't be risked. But Minotaurs only provide manual labor, and that's something that isn't as lacking to a large degree. Certainly, they do it well, and they are highly useful, but that would simply increase their overall cost, not ensure their freedom. When humanity and Minotaur kind grow so used to one another that the Minotaur become used to human interference in their lives, Minotaurs will face the real possibility of becoming an enslaved race. Even female Minotaurs don't have a resource to provide. I've heard some argue that if Minotaur milk is consumable for humans, then perhaps they could produce milk that humans could use, and that might spare them enslavement. Unfortunately, that won't be the case. Even if Minotaur milk could be consumed by humans, well, cows produce milk when they are with calves, and the same would be true of Minotaurs. Plus, cows produce milk in excess, so humans get access to the excess milk the calves do not get. Minotaurs simply don't have the extra carbs and proteins to produce milk in that kind of abundance that it could be capitalized on. So if a Minotaur mother has a baby and produces milk, it would go almost completely to the baby. And if there was any left over, it wouldn't be enough to sell. It would become more of a rare luxury sold for high profit more than it would be a tradable good. Plus, bear in mind that in some cases, the calves of dairy cows are sometimes made into veal so that all the cow's milk can go to the farm. Can you imagine the outrage that this would cause the Minotaur community if such a thing was even suggested? As we progress into the days of America, Minotaurs would find a continued necessity as manual labor and would be valued especially in the southern territories for their strength and contribution to the workforce. As slaves, however, they would likely be seen as less than even the African or native slaves. Remember what I said earlier, the less human you appear, the easier it is to forget you have human feelings and intelligence. Minotaurs are far less human than human slaves, so it's possible that even the African and native slaves would look down on Minotaurs, making them far more oppressed and mistreated in general circumstances. By the time of the Civil War and the end of slavery as a practice, we would even have to raise the question if Minotaurs would be included in the Emancipation Proclamation. Again, they aren't human, and they lack the numbers to stand against humanity in force. However, I'm of the opinion that they would likely be freed, or given more liberty than before. Human sensibilities are strong, and after the Civil War, there was a strong push to remove all of the issues that led to the war in the first place. And if there were still technically slaves around, even non-human ones, it would probably look better to simply end that practice as well. Eventually, Minotaurs would find a place in society, though where they would be welcome and appreciated would likely be limited. Not to say no one would welcome them. Time and eventual trust would lead to stride towards equal treatment. It would just simply be slow. Now, we've mentioned a lot about Minotaurs up till now, but we do need to address one more point before wrapping up. Japanese anime and media have recontextualized the Minotaur since its popularity, making them appear as mostly tall, strong, and powerful humanoid creatures with horns, tails, and hooves, taking away the more bovine features, and sometimes having well and down proportions. It may seem a silly thing to look into, but I should point out that if Minotaurs looked more like this interpretation, their chances of discrimination would definitely be reduced. With more humanoid and familiar appearances, humans would find it harder to see them as lesser beings. They still would to an extent, but not quite as much. Plus, there's no question that female Minotaurs would attract a certain kind of clientele in terms of the fetish market. Sex slavery wouldn't be off the table, and in the early days of concubine trade and the like, female Minotaurs would fetch high prices. Just something worth noting in such a circumstance. But Minotaurs have evolved in popular discourse from just giant man-eating monsters in the Greek myth to an intelligent race of cow people who could contribute much to society, if society would be willing to heed them. This was an interesting discussion about Minotaurs that I found more engaging than I expected. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video.